we all right? You know we're not liable. You go through, how much I go through. Yeah. All right. All right, good afternoon. I have a statement on Sierra Leone. The Secretary General takes note of the announcement by the National Electoral Commission on April 4th of the final results of the presidential runoff elections in Sierra Leone. He congratulates Mr. Julius Maada on his election as the next president of the Republic of Sierra Leone and all the candidates for their contributions to the successful outcome of the electoral process. He also applauds the people of Sierra Leone for their sense of responsibility that they have demonstrated in successfully completing the election in a peaceful manner. The Secretary General commends the efforts of the national, regional, and international electoral observation teams, as well as those of his special representative for West Africa and the Sahel, Mr. Mohamed Mchambas. The Secretary General appeals for the continued calm and stresses the need for all stakeholders to seek to redress of any grievances that could arise through established legal means. The Secretary General reiterates the support of the United Nations to the new government in consolidating peace and pursuing sustainable development. That statement is online. And as we told you yesterday, the Secretary General will leave tomorrow for China. And just want to correct something that I said yesterday. In Beijing, he will visit the China Peacekeeping Police Training Center and not the Peacekeeping Military Training Center. Today, the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Nikolai Mladenov, said he is following with concern the continuing preparations and the rhetoric for this Friday's Great Return March in Gaza. Mr. Mladenov called on Israeli forces to exercise maximum restraint and for Palestinians to avoid friction at the Gaza fence. He added that demonstrations and protests must be allowed to proceed in a peaceful manner. Civilians, particularly children, must not be intentionally put in danger or targeted in any way. And our humanitarian colleagues tell us that partners are alerting us of a low supply of essential drugs and medical disposables at health facilities in Gaza. There are currently zero stock levels for nearly half of the list of essential drugs and for a quarter of the list of essential disposables in Gaza. An estimated $1 million is urgently required to support the health system in Gaza for drugs, disposable equipment, gases, and lab materials in the coming 6 to 8 weeks. Humanitarian partners are working to prioritize urgently required medical items and coordinating the disbursement of supplies in preparation for the expected medical increased needs. Gaza hospitals already operating at limited capacity as a result of ongoing electricity crisis and lack of supply of essential drugs and medical disposables. And as you saw yesterday afternoon in a statement we issued on the 50th anniversary of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Secretary General said that Dr. King was one of the moral giants of the 20th century, devoting his life to equality, justice, and nonviolent social change. Decades after his death, he continues to inspire all those around the world who are struggling for human rights and human dignity in the face of oppression, discrimination, and injustice. And tomorrow is the International Day for Sports for Development and Peace. At 11:15, the Permanent Mission of Monaco and Tunisia, together with senior UN officials, will be here to brief you on that topic. And also, I failed to mention that our colleagues at the Food and Agricultural Organization told us today that their food price index rose for the second consecutive month, with wheat and maize prices leading the increase. In March, the index was 1.1% higher than in February and 0.7% above its value a year earlier. Worldwide, cereal production hit a record level in 2017, up to 33 million tons from 2016, but FAO anticipates this year's world maize and wheat production to decline based on early forecasts. More information if you're interested on the FAO website. Also want to flag that tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. in the Trusteeship Council chamber, Michelle Bachelet, who is, you know, the former president of Chile and as well as the former head of UN Women, will be delivering the Rafael Salas Memorial Lecture. The lecture is part of a series that started in 1989 as a tribute to the first executive director of the UN Population Fund. Ms. Bachelet's lecture will be titled Investing in Socially Excluded Young Women in Order to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. You're all invited, and you're all invited to ask questions should you have any. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I wanted to ask about, for a couple of readouts, one of the two meetings that the Secretary General, two of them that he had yesterday, one with the Vice President of Guyana and also with the Foreign Minister of Morocco. Particularly on the latter one, it seems like there are these quotes from the Foreign Minister of Morocco after the meeting saying that all options are on the table. Morocco is considering taking up its responsibility to act if the UN doesn't. Is it true that the Moroccan Foreign Minister threatened military action in the meeting, and what was the Secretary General's response?
Listen, I'm challenged enough to speak for the Secretary General, so I will not speak for any other parties. The Secretary General and the Foreign Minister discussed issues of mutual concern, including, obviously, the situation in Western Sahara.
No, but I mean, I guess if he's a conflict prevention guy and the person that he meets with comes out of the meeting saying, I threatened to take military action.
The Secretary General's focus continues to be on prevention of conflict, and that's why he meets regularly with representatives of member states.
And with Ambassador, with
no, unfortunately, I don't have anything on Guyana. I was hoping to get something, but I don't.
But I'm saying with the Polisario Front, their representative at the UN now recently deceased. With whom on the other side, as a conflict prevention man, is Mr. Guterres?
I don't know who. As you know, the death of the Polisario representative was very sudden. I'm coming in the last 2 or 3 days. I don't know if they have appointed someone to replace him. Abdelhamid.
Thank you. On January 9, when an Israeli settler was killed, Mr. Mladinov did not hesitate 1 minute to issue a strong condemnation. However, 17 Palestinians killed in a peaceful demonstration. The world was watching. It was peaceful. The location was on Palestinian land, yet he failed to issue the word condemnation.
What is the question, Abdelhamid?
Why he did not issue a strong condemnation?
If I'm not mistaken, the Secretary General issued a statement.
I know that, and he said he's deeply concerned.
Since Mr. Mladinov represents the Secretary General, a statement from the Secretary General would supersede whatever any envoy would say.
But why the word condemnation was absent? This is my question.
I think if you look at the Secretary General's statement, it was very strong. If you look at the periodic briefings that the Secretary General or his representative present to the Security Council, I think their language on the condemnation of the deaths of all civilians is very strong and very clear. Masuji.
Thank you, Stéphane G. I just want to know about this situation that Secretary General is reluctant to talk about. It is the situation in Indian occupied Kashmir, which continues to defy absolutely all. I mean, all the human rights organizations have condemned this, what is happening in the occupied Kashmir, killing of the Muslims and the children and so forth. Is the Secretary General has had any conversation with the Indian authorities about this at all?
The Secretary General has expressed and will continue to express his concern at the situation. I think we spoke about it earlier in the week, reminding all parties of the need to protect civilians, protect civilians. As a matter of principle, in any issue where there are differences to be bridged between member states, the good offices of the United Nations are available, but they only work if both parties ask for it and are open to it. And that's, I'm not talking about Kashmir, I'm just talking about a question of principle of the UN and how its good offices work. But obviously this is a situation that we continue to follow and follow very closely.
If you allow me, when was the last conversation that the Secretary General or any top UN official had with the Indian authorities about this?
With the Indian Prime Minister, I will have to check when the last conversation the Secretary General had with the Indian Prime Minister. I don't have it off the top of my head. Mr. Lee, and then we'll come back to you.
Thanks a lot. I wanted to ask about yesterday. It seems it was yesterday that new sexual exploitation allegations went up on the website. Last time I was asking was about the most recent ones were 5 from in the DRC by South African troops. They were dated on the website March 20th, and now 2 more have gone up, but they're both backdated, or somehow they're dated March 20th, so it's a little difficult to know. But I had not seen them before, so I want to ask you about them. One is a Burundian troop in MINUSCA in the CAR. The other one is a Gambian police officer in the now closed UNMIL. Right. What is the dating correct? What explains the gap between putting them up and them being dated that date? And 2, what's the status of the Burundian, particularly that mission is still open? Is the person suspended, not suspended?
I don't know why the issue of the dating was, but obviously, as you know, the Secretary General has pushed for, and we have been implementing a policy of much greater transparency and putting up allegations as they come into to us and to the Conduct and Discipline Unit. The one you're referring to about Burundi was reported last month to the mission in the Central African Republic. It relates to an exploitative relationship between a member of the Burundian military contingent who had been formally deployed in the mission and an adult female. The alleged victim has received medical treatment, medical assistance from an NGO, Inter-SOS, and was referred to our partner UNFPA for further assistance. The UN has requested the member state to inform us whether it will appoint a national investigative officer. They have until March 9th to respond to the request. My reading of this is that the military person in question is no longer deployed there.
When you say March 9th, you mean April 9th? I don't know. I just heard you say that. If it's possible to know going forward, just for reporting purposes, if something goes up.
I didn't say March. Did I say March 9th?
You did, but it doesn't.
Okay, no, I didn't.
My point really
9th,
is,
yeah.
Maybe you can find some answer in terms of seeing these things when your office is closed or wouldn't otherwise respond to an email. It's hard to know if to call them new. Are they new? If you put them up in April.
If they're up on the website for the first time, they're clearly new.
Okay, so what does it mean to say March 20th? That's when they became aware. It just happens to be the same
when
date
the mission
as all the DRC ones.
It's when the mission became aware. But I mean, the point is, we're talking about a few
Sure,
weeks.
Sure, I understand.
So
you understand the word, like to use the word new. We don't want to misuse the
well,
word.
new. I mean, as I said, if you haven't seen it, it's new to you.
Well, okay.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you, Steph. You mentioned Gaza and the fact that Mladenov has already issued a statement concerning calling on Israeli forces to exercise max restraint and for the Palestinians not to approach the fence. But realistically speaking, so if things were to escalate the way they did last week, and given Israeli position on the topic, what would the next step be?
It's not for me to answer hypothetical. I think our point is the Mr. Mladenov's message today, as it was before the previous march, was to the Israelis to exercise restraint, to the Palestinians that demonstrations and protests must be allowed to must be peaceful, must be allowed to proceed in a peaceful manner, and I think to both. To think about children, to not deliberately put them in harm's way, nor should they be deliberately targeted.
Right. I don't think it's an hypothetical because of the Israeli position that they said they weren't going to. I mean, reverse or.
Well, I mean, my interpretation of hypothetical is not to comment on something that has not happened. So I'm trying to stay in the now.
Thank you.
Okay, Masood.
Yes, sir. about the Rohingya Muslims who are going from state to state. They went to Bangladesh, some of them find places in Malaysia and so forth. Has anybody from the United Nations has had any talks with the Myanmar government that they're stateless people and they should be given some sort of a statehood? I mean, they've been living there forever.
Masood, if I may interrupt you, that has been a message that has been brought to the authorities in Myanmar by the Secretary General, by many others, which is to ensure the full rights of the Rohingya people, to find a solution, even an interim solution, to the issue of their status, so that they can enjoy access to education, access to health care, freedom of movement. This is an issue that is part, and it also has to do with parts of the implementation of the Annan Commission proposals. So this is a message that has been passed on. Okay.
Yes, sir. I want to know, when was the last time this conversation took place? Because
we've had contacts with the authorities in Myanmar regularly at various levels, and the deputy emergency coordinator was there not long ago. Abdel Hamid.
I want to ask about the summit meeting in Istanbul between Iran, Russian Federation, and Turkey.
Yeah.
Was the UN invited to that meeting, and was it involved in any way?
No, I don't believe we were. This, from my reading of it and from seeing it from a few miles away, is that it was a summit meeting between three heads of states. Mr. Lee, and then.
Sure. I want to ask you about Cameroon and also the global service delivery model. Mm-hmm. In Cameroon, there was a pretty widely publicized event in which it was alleged by the government that European tourists had been taken hostage from Switzerland and Italy. And it was reported that they were taken hostage until the tour guide said that they were not taken hostage. Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering is that since this is the kind of incident that has the potential, if misreported, to justify characterizing people as extremists and terrorists akin to Boko Haram, what is the UN, which has a country team there, what is its understanding of what took place? Was it a hostage-taking or not a hostage-taking? Given that hostages said they weren't taken.
I don't have any information. I can check with them. I'm not sure they were involved in this in any way. But
it seems like the country team should have some view.
I'm just saying, I have nothing in here.
Okay.
And if I have something,
I'm hoping that on global service delivery, Melda, you do. My understanding is that after a review of 45 cities, Antonio Guterres has selected 4 cities as the winners of 684 UN posts. Mm-hmm. Mexico City, Nairobi, Kuala Lumpur, Budapest, which he'd chosen previously. And I just wanted to know, it seems like it's a big thing that they've just told ACABQ what the 4 cities are. Mm-hmm. What's the logic behind it? What's the impact on are people that are employed here, particularly local staff, are they able to move to these new jobs, or are they going to be terminated? Are new jobs going to be found for them? And how did he select these 4 out of the 45 cities listed?
It went through a rigorous process. I will have to check, but my understanding is that obviously whenever jobs are moved, staff always have the option of moving with the post. But let me try to get some more detailed language on that.
On climate change, today the Colorado State University released its 2018 hurricane season forecast with at least 14 named storms coming up in the next. The season starts next June. So, is this something that speaks to the Secretary General's distress call last week for a global action
Yes, very much so. I think we're seeing from different quarters, whether it's from the UN or private sectors or educational institutions, a lot of data that only can underscore and support, as you say, the distress call that the Secretary General issued. He is very concerned about the lack of action to help us get to the targets set by Paris. During the Paris Climate Agreement, nationally determined goals were set. We need to see action to meet those goals. I think we're seeing a lot of times the private sector moving faster than governments, but I think all these scientific papers should just focus us and focus governments on even greater and more rapid action. Thank you, and I will leave you in the hands of Mr. Varma, Brendan Varma, that is.